In this video, I'm going to show you how to assign players to bases. So if you make money in the base, it goes to the player. And we're going to have little arrows showing which way to go to your base. So this is player 2, and it says player 2 up here. It was assigned when he entered the game. When we go to our base, the arrow goes away, but we still see our name tag, right? And we have an arrow over here for player 1. You can only see your own arrow. There we go. Now, the most important part is when you leave the game, we need to free up the base, right? So we have player 2. Notice it over here. I'm going to leave the game. This is player 2. We'll say leave. And look at that. It freed up. No more player 2. Somebody comes in here, they can have that base. Let's go ahead and get started. I have an empty base plate right here. There's nothing in my game. And the first thing I'm going to do is make a simple base. And you could decorate this as much as you want. But we're going to need a few parts, right? So I'm going to add a part. And this is going to be the floor. So we'll say floor. And I'm going to anchor the floor. So let's go down here where it says anchored. Anchor it. And then I also want cast shadows off. Sometimes I have trouble finding that one. I'm going to do CAS up here. And I'm not going to have any shadows because it's not a spooky game. You may want to have shadows if you have a spooky game, but they use resources and we don't really need them. So let's change our floor size, right? Instead of 4 by 1 by 2, how about 20 by 1 by 20? Make it as big as you want, right? But for the video, that's going to be fine. I'm going to change the position, the C-frame position. I think I'll make this, how about when we enter the world by default, let's see it. So I'll say 0 by 0.5 by, how about -40? There we go, way to go. Right there, right? So when we enter the world, we're going to be looking down the Z-axis by default. So we can find it really easy. Now I think I'll add a little board where we could put the name tags on our bases. I'm going to put it on the front. I'm going to pretend there's a little building there. I'm going to put it on the front, maybe over the door or something. You could move this stuff around however you want. I'm going to put a part here, and that's going to be the board that has my name. I'm just going to call it board. Let's change the size of that. Go down here. How about instead of 4 by 1 by 2, maybe we'll make that 20, have it go across our base, and then 4 studs high, 1 stud thick. That should work. Let's go ahead and pull this out. And then I hit the collisions, we'll bounce it down here, and then maybe line it up a little bit. All right, I'm going to turn my cast shadows off in a second, and I'm not going to bother getting this perfect, right? But I am going to turn the cast shadows off. Yeah. All right, let's move it up, right? We're going to move it up, back. Maybe I'll just hard code a number in there. So we got C-frame position. I managed to get to 6.499. Maybe we'll move to like 12 studs high. Oh, and look, our X is off a little bit, the X-axis. I'm going to get rid of that 0.1. I'm just going to make it 0. Let's go ahead and anchor this. You're probably going to put it on the side of your building somewhere, but let's anchor it so it doesn't fall while we're doing our testing. And on the board itself, we are going to need a surface GUI because we're going to put the name, right? So SUR, surface GUI. And then, not screen GUI though, but surface GUI. Sometimes I make that mistake. Hit the plus and then a text label, right? TEX. I'm going to make these shorter names because we're going to access it in code. So I'm just going to call that GUI. It's on the board. It's a GUI. We know what it is. It's surface GUI, right? And then here, I'm just going to do LBL for label. All right, now we can't see it. And I believe we are looking at the back of our part. So if we go to GUI and we take a look, let's see, should find face. There it is, face, front. Let's try back. All right, there it is. That's good. So now on our label, let's make that bigger. So I went to the label and I want to go to size. It's in pixels. How about we do 100% of the X, so it's just the 1, comma, 0 pixel offset on the X, comma, 1 on the Y, so 100% of the Y of the part, and 0 pixel offset of the Y. Notice I didn't put in the curly brackets. Roblox puts it in there for you. Now, I don't want all this white stuff here. I'm going to get rid of the background, and I'm going to make that a little bit bigger, right? It's tiny. But first, background transparency, let's say 1. Good. And then we're going to work on our text a little bit. You're going to want to modify this for your kind of your own style, right? I like to use bangers. And then we can make it bigger. And here, let's put some text in here. It says label. Let's say label for a long name, so we can see what a long name will look like. See, it's still tiny. That's all right. That's all right. Let's get down here, and then we'll do text scaled. I think that'll work, right? And you can make it smaller if you want, but I think that'll work. Oh, text stroke transparency. I like to use text stroke transparency if I use a color to add contrast. So I'm going to do 0, and you're going to see like text stroke transparency. You're going to see like a little outline around it, but we can't see it because we got to change the color. All right, see that? That's good. There's like a little outline around the letters. Now let's make this a model. So let's get the board and then control click the floor, right click, group as model. And this is going to be my base, but I'm going to give it a number. So each number is going to be unique. It's going to act as my ID number, so I don't have to put a tag on it or like a string value to hold IDs. On that base, since we only have one, it doesn't matter. Let's go ahead and right click and then group as model again. And I'm going to group all of my bases into a model called bases, right? So we would duplicate these and move them around. And we're going to do that. We're going to do that later. But let's get one base the way we want it first. Let's make the beam that goes from the player to the base now, because I think that'll be helpful in testing. I'm going to move over here a little bit, and I'm going to go to avatar. I'll get a rig by rig builder. Then you can do R15 or R6. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to use it to make the beam right now. All right, we got our rig. I'm going to open the rig up and let's look for humanoid root part. There it is down here. I'm going to add on the humanoid root part, hit this plus sign, AT for attachment. There's my attachment. I'm going to call this ATT 0. And don't worry, we're going to move this to starter character scripts, but we want to see it first. And then I'm going to duplicate that ATT 0, Control D. I'm going to make that ATT 1, right? And I'm also going to need a beam. So on the humanoid root part, hit the plus, B for beam, and now we got our beam. Let's get our beam. With the beam selected, we're going to look for attachment 0. Click that there, right beside attachment 0. Go up to our ATT 0 on the humanoid root part. Go to attachment 1. Click to the right of that, ATT 1. Now we're going to grab our ATT 1 and pull it on out. There's our beam. Let's put some arrows on our beam that are moving outwards, right? So let's go to Home, Toolbox, and then I'm under the Creator Store tab here. Let's go to Decals, and then I'm going to say Arrow, right? And then if the arrow is pointing down, I don't have to reorient my beam or anything. So I'm going to right-click this. I'm going to use this arrow, copy Asset ID, and then I'm going to go to my beam. I'm going to look for texture, right? And then I'm going to copy, or I'm going to right click. I'm going to paste, not copy, but paste. Hit enter. Oh yeah, we got a beam. We can adjust this beam. I'm going to close the toolbox, and then for texture length, let's try and make it a little bigger. How about, I don't know, maybe 4? That's cool. What about stretch? I think static is pretty good. They don't seem to change much, but they will depending on your decal. So you might want to play with those. Speed, you can make it go faster if you want. What's 4 do? That's kind of good, right? Maybe we'll go with 3. And you could get a little light emission too. I'm gonna make that a 1 for light emission. You don't really see much of a difference here. Let's go down to let's see. Face camera, because if we go like this, we can't see our beam. If we do face camera, no matter where our camera's at, we see the beam, right? That's pretty handy. Let's do that. I'm going to click on ATT 0, control click on ATT 1, control click on beam. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say copy. And then I'm going to go down to our starter player, right? We want to get our starter character scripts, and then I'll hit this plus sign, add a local script, and then we could say something like location or something, right? Well, we don't want locate. Yeah. Find base. Find base. That'll work. And then I'm going to right click on find base. I'm going to paste into. So we're going to put that on our find base. Only we're going to see our beam. You'd have to do it server side if you wanted everybody to see your beam, but that would be a little bit confusing. We can work on this script right now because it's just setting the beam to the location of the base. Oh, we're going to get the base server side, right? So what do we got to do? Let's go to replicated storage, and we're going to get a remote event. So hit the plus, add a remote event. There we go. And I'm going to rename that to path RE. It's going to show us the path to go when we enter the world. And then in order to access that so that we can get events from the server, like when we join the game and where we want to go, let's do local RS for replicated storage, game, get service, replicated storage, and then I can get my path RE from replicated storage, wait for child, path RE. Now remember, on our script, this is a script we're working on now, right? Find base. We have our ATT0, ATT1, and beam. Let's get references for those. So we'll say local ATT0 equals, and what we got here, a script, wait for child ATT0, and then ATT1 script, wait for child ATT1. And then we want the beam too. Script, wait for child, and then beam. What else are we going to need? Oh, let's get the character. So notice we are on starter character scripts. If we do this, if we say local char script, script.parent, it is going to go to the character, right? Because we are on starter character scripts. Just be careful. If you move it to starter player scripts, you're going to have to do something different to get the character, right? You have to get the player first. Now, one of the benefits of having our find base script on the character, we don't have to do a lot with our attaching the attachments and the beam to the character because the script's going to get transferred right into the character. Let's try it out. Let's say path.re on client event. So when that fires from the server, we're going to have this anonymous function. The function is going to have the position of the base, which we don't have yet. And then we're going to do an enable flag, right? We're going to either enable the beam or disable the beam. And I'm going to say if enabled, enable flag, then ATT1 is the only thing I really have to move. And it is going to be on the character because the script's going to be on the character. So I'm going to say ATT1, world position, we are going to go to the base, and that's going to be the floor, right? We didn't put it on a door, so we may want to bump it up a little bit. How about plus vector 3 new, 0 on the X, 1 on the Y, maybe 3 on the Y, 0 on the Z. That's going to bump up our arrow a little bit, not going into the floor. Although you could try that. You might like it going to the floor. And then we're going to get the beam. So the beam's all set up. All we got to do is enable it. So we'll say enabled equals, you could do enabled flag, or you could just do, how about true, right? And then you can see it's a Boolean right off the start. And then else, well, if we're going to send an enable false, let's just do that, right? Now, we're not going to fire this yet because we're not getting a position and we don't have any code from the server to do that. But if we hit play, we will still see the arrow similar to our little NPC guy. How about we take that ATT1 that we stretched out and we're going to put it back into our character. And that's not going to be hard to do. I could even get rid of him. You want to get rid of him? Delete. Let's go to our ATT0. If you look at the C frame position, it is 0, 0, 0, right? You could control C to copy it, but it's not going to be hard to remember. That's how we drug it out. So the position is relative to the parent with attachments, right? That's why I use world position if you want to know where the base is. Now, when you go to play it, you're not going to see it because everything is inside. All right, and it is enabled. You could disable it. That might be a little bit cleaner. Let's go ahead and turn that off. And then for beam, we'll just go down here and disable the beam if I can find it. There we go. Now let's head on over to server side. Let's go to server script service, hit the plus, add a script. Let's call this like game manager. in the game manager, let's get rid of this print statement. And we'll get the players service. Whoops, got to spell it right there. Players. And we'll do game get service players. And then let's get replicated storage because we need to get our path RE. So I'll do the game.get service here for replicated storage. What other service do you think we'll need? We need to use the collection service. I think I'm going to tag. I'm going to tag my bases, right? So we'll say game get service collection service, and we have not tagged our bases yet. So let's go back to bases video here. This is my workspace, and then click on your base, right? Now that's the model for all of the bases. Let's tag the individual bases as base. So I'm going to come up here, I'm going to right click, and we're going to find the tag editor. Remember, there's two, both will work. I prefer this one. Yes, this one. Right, and then I'm just going to write base, right? And then we're going to select one. That's a base, right? And then we're going to tag it. And when we duplicate it, the tag should transfer over, but we'll check them just in case. So we have our base, our single base tagged. Go back to Game Manager. What else do we want to do? Let's do, let's do a variable for all of the bases that were tagged. We'll say bases equals collection service. Get tagged. We only got one, but that's all right. We can add some. We will add some. Base. So if it's anything tagged base, we're going to put it into bases. And then, oh yeah, don't forget, we're going to need our path RE for RS. Wait for child. Path RE. Let's do a quick function to add player data, right? And then we'll call it p data, and then I say instance new. We'll say folder. We'll put the folder on the player. The player will be the parent, and then p data dot name. You don't have to spell it this way. It's not like leader stats, but if you spell it some way that you're going to remember it, because we're going to be accessing it. Well, you would be accessing it if you did a full game, right? You'd want to remember it. So base ID is going to be stored in the player, right? For the base that they find. And we'll put a string value on the player in this player data folder, right? So the parent will be p data. And then we'll say base ID dot name equals base ID. I think we're good. Let's just go ahead and add that to the player when they enter the game. We'll say players dot player added. Oh man, player added. Connect function player. I'm going to move this up a little bit so it's not down on the bottom of the video. I'm going to say add player data, and then we're going to pass in the player. Now you could put your leader stats in there too. All right, I just got a new keyboard, so I'm making more mistakes than normal. Let's try it out. We'll play it. Let's see where our data is. There's our player service. We're going to open it. There's Simtech Gamer 7. Open that. Player data. Oh, yeah, base ID. So that's where we're going to store the ID for his base. All right, let's turn this off. So now we know that the player is going to have the base ID stored in their player data. We also have to have something in our base to point to the player that owns them, right? So that they can access both. Base can know the player and the player can know the base. So I'm going to go to base number 1, right? And I'm going to click on it, maybe get this plus sign here. I'm going to add an object value. Now you could do this with string values for the user ID, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put the whole player right there. Let's say owner, and that's going to be the value. And let's get rid of this text right here. That was great for our formatting our sign. Open up your board, go to GUI, and then open that up if it's not open, label. And we'll go down a little bit, look for the text, and we have this label for a long name. There we go. And now it's just going to have a name. You could put like vacant in there, but I think I'm just going to leave it blank until a player is assigned. All right, that's pretty good. Let's make sure our collisions are off. I'm going to right click. I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to make this base number 2. Right, and then I'm going to get the move tool. Let's move that out a little bit. We'll make another one. Control D, duplicate again. That'll work. And you could space those out a little bit better, but this is good for a video. That's going to be ID 3. And now we have 3 bases to choose from when we're assigning bases to players. But one more quick thing before we go back into our code, let's take a look at the tag editor, and then let's see if all of our bases are tagged. So we have base 1. Ah, yes, there's a tag. Base 2, tag. Base 3, tag. Good. If we go to like the spawn location, no tag. We're going to need that. Let's go to our game manager. And you might want to double check that this base is the same as on the tag editor. Otherwise, they're not going to find the tagged bases. That's going to be the table we're going to be using, but we're going to need this tag to find the bases in the game. Let's go down a little bit after you've checked that. When a player is added to the game, we're going to add the player data, and then we're going to do a for loop through the bases to see which ones are available, give one to the player. So we'll say for I and base in pairs, and there's our little bases table. Let's do a little if statement to see if the base is available. So we'll say if not base dot owner dot value. So if there's nothing in there, it'll be nil. And not nil is going to be a true. So this will fire. And then let's get this right here. Control C, Control V, and then we'll put the player in there. So now our owner value for the base is the player. Let's also get the floor, because we've got to send our beam out. We're going to need that position. And that's how I'm going to get the position. I'm going to say base.floor. That's for the floor, and now we'll get the position of the floor. We'll just call that POS, short for position. So we'll say floor.position. And now we need our path RE. We will do a colon, and then we're going to fire client. You have to specify who you're firing to, which is the player, and then we're going to do the position. And then we also have that flag true or false for if we want to turn our beam on or off. So true, we're turning it on. Now we could try this out and see if we're getting a beam to our base. Here we go. And it looks like it's working, right? We have arrows going to the base. What happens if we move? I was thinking that might happen. So that's not quite right, but it's a really easy fix. The ATT1 is parented to the char still. Let's turn this off. I have my find base script. If you don't know where it is, let's go ahead and do show and explorer. Oh, it's in starter player, starter character scripts, and then find base. So this is the local script. What we need to do is get ATT1, change the parent to the workplace. And that way, when we run around, it's not going to change it. Let's try it now. Yeah, we got a different base. Look at that. That's pretty good. Now we can turn this off when we find our base and then update this up here. So stop, and then we go to the game manager. And if you accidentally closed it, the game manager is server script service, game manager. All right, now we need something to update that overhead sign for our base. Let's put a helper function above the player added, where we capture the player added event. Let's say local function. I'm going to call it something like, how about change site status or whatever? I think that's good. Change site status. We're going to pass in the player and the base. Unless we're leaving the game, then we're just going to pass in the player. So I'm going to check to see if we passed in the base. If we did, then it's somebody entering, and we're going to update the name. So we'll say, hey, base, what do we call this? Board, and then GUI.lbl.text, and that's going to be the player.name. And also let's assign the base ID, which is the base name, to the player, right? So we had this player.player data. Doesn't help me on that one with the IntelliSense. Player data base ID value, because it's a string value, and then we're going to say base.name. It's this one right here, right? So we'll have to remember to check this when we're doing our testing. Make sure that gets updated. So let's do some testing. Let's get our change site status. We'll do a Control C to copy it. Come on down here, right below where we fired to the client on our path RE. Paste it. And some of you may have noticed, we're looping through all of the bases and assigning our player. If it doesn't have a player, what we really need to do is break when we find a site, when we find a base. That should do it. Let's go ahead and try it. Let's hit the play button. Nice. All right. Now we don't turn the beam off yet, but we have Simtech Gamer 7 assigned here. Let's open up our workspace. We'll go to bases. And which one is this one? It's 3. All right. So I got lucky. Let's do owner, value, Simtech Gamer 7. Now on our player, that's the workspace. Let's close the workspace. Let's go to the player service, Simtech Gamer 7, player data, base ID 3. Nice. So we have a 1-to-1 match. That's pretty good. And you could go to the other bases and check them out. I would actually recommend it. Let's just do one here. Owner. It's empty. Good, good. Hit stop and let's go back to our game manager. Let's free the base when we're leaving the game. So under the player added, move the code down up a little bit. Let's do our players dot player removing, connect that. Just do an anonymous function because there's not going to be a lot of code here. And then we'll get our change site status, this one, right? Control C, Control V. Oh, but there's no base. Let's just pass a nil in there. All right, now let's go back up to change site status. If there's no base, like if we passed in a nil, that's not too bad. All we got to do is loop through our bases. There's not going to be a huge amount. I mean, even in a big world, what, you might have like 50, right? We'll say I and V in pairs. We have our bases table. Do, if V, that's our base, right? So V is the base. I is like 1, 2, 3, 4 and stuff like that. So V name will be a number like 1, 2, and 3 in our example. And then we'll do player dot player data dot base ID dot value. If it's the same as the name, then we know to clear it, right? That's the player that's leaving the world. We'll say V owner dot value will now equal nil. And then we'll say V, how about board, right? That's what we called it on our base. GUI, LBL, text equals, and I'm not going to make it vacant. I'm just going to do an empty string. All right, so now when we leave, it should free up the base. We're going to have trouble testing that with just this play button. Let's go to the test server. We'll do 2 players. We'll hit the start. That's looking pretty promising. So player 1, he's got a base. Player 2's got a base. We still have to turn off our beam when we touch it. But let's see if when player 2 leaves, does player 1 see player 2 base free up? So I don't want to clean up. I want to go here and I'll say leave. He's gone. Oh yeah, that's looking good. Let's see if it's actually cleaned up. So this is the server, right? So on the bases, this one in the middle is 1, right? And then we moved it over to the right first. So base 2 should be empty for the owner. It is. And then base 3, we should still have our person. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. All right, let's do a cleanup here. And now we're going to make it so the beam shuts off when we touch our base. So in the game manager, let's scroll down to player added. And then I'm going to go below change site status. I'm going to make a connection, right? I'll do connection. I'm going to do the floor. You could do a door. You could do some part that they got to touch first. But I just have it as the floor. I'm going to get the touched event. I'll have our connection. We'll say function. And then other part. This will be the part that touches our floor. and we're thinking it's a foot, right? And then the parent would be the character. So we have our other part. We'll say local. Maybe it's a player, right? So we'll say maybe player. Well, let's go to the player service because it might not have been a player. We got to check. And then we'll say get player from character. Well, if we have the other part, parent, and that's a character, then we're going to be in business. So if it was a player's foot, the character of a player's foot, then the parent would be the character, and then the players would return this maybe char. And it would, in fact, it would be a char, right? But maybe not. Might be just a building part or somebody kicked the ball or something like that. So we'll say if maybe char, right? If it's not nil, but we also want to get the right player, right? So we'll say and maybe player equals player, then let's do path RE fire client. I will say player, and I'm not going to do anything with this value. That's the position, but I'm going to send it over for a placeholder. This I am, right? So we're going to have that false there. That's turn the beam off. The beam is not on. And we really don't need our connection anymore, right? So I'll say disconnect. Look at that. We got an error. Unknown global. Watch this. We'll just do this. Control C. We can't really declare it there and then use it in that block. Control V, nil. So I'm going to declare it right here. And that way we could use it in the code block. Looking good. All right, let's try it out. Should we do the test server? Let's do that. Test server, start. Here we go. And let's get rid of some of these windows so we have a little more room to see. There we go. All right. So this is player 1. Player 2 cannot see his beam. Here's player 2. Player 1 cannot see his beam. He's going to run up here. Boom. Beam is gone. What happens if we die? We're not going to see it coming back. Right? Because we did it on the player event. Oh, we can't really do it that way. That's okay. You'll have to trust me on that one. And here is player 1. Beam is gone. Cool. All right. Good luck with that. I will see you in the next video.